Hello everybody, I'm Stephanie. Today we're going to be looking at the second part of relieving back pain by reestablishing some balance in the life. Last time we looked at getting some of the inflammation down in the body when it comes to trigger points and some natural remedies that you can do. Today we're going to look at balancing stress in our lives. There is a huge connection between the mind and the body, and I think sometimes in Western culture we don't quite understand how big that connection is. So we're going to look at a few things that can help us balance out that stress in our life. So join me on your mat wherever you're at and let's get started. When we're dealing with back pain, we know that that pain can affect our mental state. But sometimes we don't really think that the reverse can also be true, that our mental state can affect how we're feeling physically. There's this huge connection between pain in the body and what's going on in the mind. Every single time I know, at least in my life, when I have felt intense pain in my body and something has happened, it has been because of the stress that I'm feeling emotionally. There's something big usually going on in my life. So really beginning to realize how we hold that stress in the body. We might not even realize that we're tensing and holding things. So there's this huge connection between the mind and the emotions and then what happens in our bodies. So one of the things that can happen is the psoas can get very, very tight. And so you may have heard before that the psoas holds a lot of emotion, it holds a lot of fear and anxiety. And what happens is when that muscle gets tight, it's connected in from the spine and runs all the way down through the hip and then connects into the leg. So this is a very big, strong muscle that when it tenses up and shortens, everything can start to hurt from the low back, maybe into the hips. You might feel things into the upper thigh. So we want to release those muscles. And sometimes when we're in just a lot of pain, some of the things that really release the psoas can happen on the stomach. So I'm going to show you a few poses that you can do to kind of release those muscles. So you're going to come onto your belly very gently and then noticing how your hips are connected down into the ground. We want to keep this neutral pelvis and not let those hips tip up. So getting that connection down, and then depending on how long your arms are, you might have to use a strap or a belt, but you're going to bend one leg. I'm going to start with my right, and you're going to reach back for the ankle and making sure not to grab just the toes of the foot, but making that connection with the ankle. You can place your other arm underneath your forehead and just kind of rest here. Maybe pulling the leg in just for a moment, feeling the thigh stretch out first. Especially if you've been in a lot of pain and you've been sitting or lying down, the thigh muscles can just get a little tight because they haven't been used very much. Then once you feel those thigh muscles release, you're going to find a little bit more activation. So allowing the right shoulder to roll back, so you're opening up and giving some extra length to the arm. Then with an exhale, very gently beginning to kick the foot into the hand, and the knee is going to come off the mat. Keeping both hips down onto the mat, you're really sending your breath and your intention down into the psoas there to find some length. Really taking your time, breathing there, and if it feels okay, then maybe sending the leg a little higher, the knee a little higher. Breathing there, feeling the psoas lengthen. And then just taking it a step at a time. Maybe the knee comes up a little bit further. Maybe you realize it's a little bit too intense. It comes back down. But continue to press the foot into the hand. That's going to find a little bit more length into the psoas. And then release. Doing the other side. So you're going to switch hands. Right arm's going to come underneath the forehead. Left hand's going to reach back for the left ankle. Again, making sure not to grab onto the foot. Maybe pulling the leg in first to find some length in the thigh, then rolling the left shoulder back and beginning to kick the foot into the hand. So this is very similar to your kind of standing dancer pose, but you're not having to worry so much about activating the core and the standing leg. You're really just bringing the awareness to finding that length into the psoas. Breathing into the left side, still checking, are both hip points still down? And release. Very gently, hands are going to come back underneath your shoulders. And finding some counter movement in the low back, finding your neutral back. And we're really going to talk about this when we get to flexibility, because part of my issue was I was so flexible, I thought my flat back was kind of here, and it wasn't. So finding a little bit of movement, just rocking back and forth, keeping the natural arch in the low back. And then coming back into your child's pose, toes touching, knees apart. Really taking your time coming down to the mat. And you can stay here as long as you want. If this feels good, or brings some release to the low back. But really sending your breath and your energy into releasing the psoas. Then walking those hands back up. We're going to do a guided meditation together to kind of release some of the anxiety in the body, and we might not be realizing that we're holding certain muscles. So really concentrating on letting those things go. But the first thing we want to do is find a comfortable position. And when you're in low back pain, that can be very difficult. So I'm going to give you a couple of different options. Sometimes it might feel good to lie on one side or the other, depending on what's going on. If you feel it more intensely on one side or the other, you want to keep the side that has more pain kind of up. So for example, if my left side felt very inflamed and where that's all the tightness was, I'm going to lay on my opposite side so my left side can stay up. You're going to need a couple of pillows. You're kind of creating a little pillow wall. And this is what I kind of sleep with every night. My husband thinks it's funny because I always have this pillow wall going on. You want to have something underneath your head so that the neck can be in neutral position and not just down on the floor. You're going to be hugging one pillow, and then one pillow is going to go between your knees. So we're going to start with that one. And making sure that the pillow is big enough that not only is it over the knee, but it's also over the ankle. Because if it's just over the knee, then what can happen is one foot wants to come in or back behind, and it unaligns things. So making sure it's big enough so that the ankle can get stacked and the knee can get stacked. But this knee is going to be a little bit different. You don't want both of the knees to be directly on top of each other. You want to look more for the hips to be on top of each other. So for that to happen, the top knee is actually going to pull back a little bit so that the top hip is stacked. You will feel this, a little bit of activation in the glute, and it will release as you're lying down. The other pillow, if you have a little curve in your body, this is really going to be a really good thing, because you're going to place just the very edge of the pillow underneath that curve to kind of give some support so that this side is really long and extended, because this is the side we want to stretch and open up, because that's what's in pain if it's the left side. Because what happens is if you don't have it there and you're laying on your side and you lengthen down, then the side that you're trying to lengthen crunches. So we want to create this with a pillow. You can also do this with a hand towel. You can roll it up underneath your side, but I kind of like the pillow because then you can kind of hug it. So we've got our knees. The hips are stacked. The top knee is pulled back a little bit. The ankles are stacked. I've got a pillow underneath that side, and then I'm hugging this pillow. And then really taking a moment to let the muscles relax. Again, you can do this on the other side also. You just flip it over, laying on your left side if the right side is bugging you a little bit more. It may be that both sides of the low back are bothering you. So it might feel good to lie on your back, take a pillow or a bolster or something that's got a lot of support that can prop the knees up, and you're going to place it right underneath the knees and then lay down on your back. So I'm going to stay here for our time together today. So whether on your side or you're on your back, you have some kind of support. This is going to take the pressure off of the low back. If you don't have anything at all, let's say you're just kind of out and about, you can bend the knees and bring the knees together and the feet apart. This also takes some pressure off of the low back. But really just beginning to breathe. We hold a lot of tension. And this comes out when we're sleeping. If you have any kind of grinding in the teeth or you have TMJ, that's when you do a lot of it, is at night. So we're not completely relaxed at night. It is a practice to get the body to relax and let go. So beginning with the mind, closing the eyes and taking a few deep breaths in through the nose and out through the nose. And then taking that a little bit farther, deeper into the body, breathing in, feeling all that pain and inflammation, and with your exhale, mentally push it out, let it go. And then we're going to be seeking and looking through the body to see what muscles we're kind of holding and tensing. You might think, no, I'm completely relaxed. But when we bring our mind and attention to those body parts, I really want you to let them go. So we're going to start down at the toes. Just letting the toes relax. They might turn out. Working your way up to the ankles. Just letting the feet flop open. Working the way up the legs, beginning to feel the legs go heavy. So the calves are softening. The shins are softening. Moving up the legs to the knees, the fronts of the knees, the backs of the knees. And as you're letting the legs get heavy, you might notice that the legs turn out a little bit more, and that's completely natural. Working your way up the legs to the thighs, to the hamstrings. And as you're releasing those muscles, you might notice that they were pulling on the low back a little bit. Working up to the glutes. And this is a lot of times, I know for me, where I'm holding and I don't even realize. And when I call my attention there and I release, it's almost like I can feel myself sinking down deeper into my mat, or if I'm doing this in the bed. But just letting those muscles relax. Because when we're in pain, our body wants to kind of protect and hold, and so we tense up all around those areas. Mentally moving up the body into the hips, feeling them soften and release. And you'll notice if the hips have relaxed, because as you're breathing in and out, ever so slightly, you might be able to feel the pelvis tipping front and back. Or you might even feel space just being breathed in to the SI joints. Mentally moving into both of the psoas. Just visualizing that connection from the leg, running up through the hip and connecting into the spine. Just mentally feeling it relax and lengthen. Moving up the body, to the core, letting it relax. Moving back around to the low back, allowing the natural arch in your low back. Moving up to the middle back. Mentally breathing space into all the vertebrae. And you might feel muscles twitch as you're doing this and letting them release. You might not feel anything release at all. It does take some practice to allow those muscles to release that we've been tensing and holding for so long. Moving to the upper back. And then into the front body, to the heart area. As you're breathing, feeling the ribs expand as you inhale and sink back in as you exhale. Allowing the shoulders to roll back, almost imagining as if your heart space is lifting a little bit higher up towards the ceiling. And just that mental openness or feeling of opening up that heart space can make you feel very vulnerable. And that's okay if that brings up any kind of emotions. It can be a scary place. Just sending the breath there. And taking the breath and sending it down the arms, feeling the shoulders get heavy, to the elbows, to the wrists, to the fingers, letting them naturally curl. And then making your way back to the shoulders. Did they tense up again? Can you let them relax? It might just be a teeny tiny movement to the back of the neck, into the jaw, letting the jaw kind of relax. Lips stay together, but the jaw relaxes. It's almost like it's falling back down towards the ground, almost like you have a big bite of apple in your mouth. Allowing your tongue to come away from the top of your mouth. Just let it go heavy. Sending that awareness up the face, into the eyes. Letting the eyes get heavy. Up to the forehead, letting all of those worry lines just soften. And just letting anything else that feels tight or tense go out through the top of your head. And coming back to the breath. And just noticing what you're feeling. You might feel muscles twitching again. You might even become aware of blood coursing through your body. And just that ever so slight movement of the body from that pulsing of the blood through the body. And then bringing your awareness to whatever part of your body has been hurting, if it's been the low back or if you know it's in the vertebrae or the hips or wherever. And just mentally imagining those parts healing and becoming whole. So if there's any inflammation there, imagine it shrinking. If there's any loss of disc space, just imagine the breath filling it back in and opening it up. If there's any tight muscles or just whatever you're dealing with, just imagine the body healing. It's not a magic kind of thing where I'm healed all of a sudden, but it's just beginning to realize the connection between our mental state and our bodies. And sometimes when we get in this cycle of pain, we don't think we're ever going to get better. This is just where it's going to be. So imagining ourselves healing and feeling whole. And if this is a comfortable space for you, you're welcome to stay in this posture for as long as you'd like. We do have things sometimes in our lives we've got to get to, so if you're needing to move, very gently, blinking the eyes open a few times, noticing if that awareness tenses up anything in the body suddenly. Maybe coming back to the breath. Beginning to rock the head side to side very gently. And if you're already on your side, just removing the pillows, or if you're on your back, removing any of the props you have and rolling onto your side. Using your arm as a pillow. Using your top hand to press into the ground on an inhale, coming up. And sitting high on your sits bones. Taking that pressure off of the low back. Sometimes we sit back and everything just kind of crunches. So really finding those sit bones and sitting tall, lifting up. Just noticing how you're feeling, if that's restored some of the balance in your life. So we're working on restoring balance, and then next we're going to work on building some strength to hold that balance. We're going to look then at flexibility and how, if you're super flexible, that can be sometimes a scary place to be, or not flexible at all. We want to find this happy median. And then we're also going to be looking at traction. So those four things: balance, strength, flexibility, and traction. Those are areas we're going to look at to kind of begin to heal and stabilize our low back issues. So I'm living this with you right now. This is where I've been for the past few months, dealing with low back pain. And these are some of the things that have really helped me out. I'm not back to where I would like to be yet, and you may not either. So be kind with yourself. It takes time. And I hate to say it, but the older we are, the longer it kind of takes the body. So we really want to treat our bodies with love and respect. Thank you so much for joining me today. Blessings and namaste.